Advice to the aspiring young agriculture professional or farmer. That's what we're covering in this 400th episode of the Business of Agriculture. Are you looking for productive efficiencies in growing higher yielding, better performing crops? New Fields Ag provides a complete portfolio of biological products focused on you, the farmer. Visit newfieldsag.com for more information to help you farm better. Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of the Business of Agriculture. I got a great one for you today. I've got two great guests. They are the Farm for Profit guys, Tanner Winterhof and Corey Hillebo. I have a hard time with his name. Anyway, I was on their show back in January. We bumped into one another, all of us at a conference in Kansas City. They had me sitting on their show, and I said, you know what? It would be a great honor to have you on for my 400th episode. So yes, we've been doing this for 8 years. Every Monday, the Business of Agriculture comes out. Check it out wherever you get your audio, video, podcast from, and also go on video. You know, we're trying to build up the YouTube following. Never devoted any attention to that until beginning in 2025. So do please go to my YouTube channel and hit subscribe. Just go into YouTube, type in Damian Mason, hit subscribe. It doesn't cost nothing. You can also check out the video on Acres TV. Advice for the aspiring young agricultural person. Could be entering entrepreneurialism, could be going to work for a company, could be graduating from high school or college. We're releasing this on June 2nd. Let's face it, we just got through commencement here in May, all the graduates. What do you need to know? Or what, more importantly, do we wish we had known when we were the young, aspiring new person in agriculture? So Corey and Tanner are a little closer to that because they're in their mid-late 30s. I'm in my mid-50s. I can give you lots of perspective. Before I do that, I want to hear from them. Corey, what do you know now that you didn't know then?
Well, first of all, congrats on your 400th episode, Damian. That's 8 years is a long time to be doing this. We've been doing it for 6 now, and congratulations on that.
You know what? By the way, you know what happens, and Tanner's nodding his head, is that everybody and their sister has an idea. You know, I think that, and you know, two stoners are sitting in their parents' basement, you know, doing weed and like listening to music. We should start a music podcast, man. We're good at this. And it lasts for 6. Longevity means it's work. That's the thing. It's not really about, oh my God, it's such creative genius. At some point, it's like everything from comedy to being a good quarterback. It comes down to daily effort, right? It becomes down to putting in the work and saying, I'm going to create the show.
Yep, even when you don't feel like it.
There's no question about that.
like today, I'm sure when you having us on here.
No, that's great. I'm excited. I actually like you guys. I mean, let's face it, Tanner's easier to like than you, but I actually like you.
It's the first time I have ever heard anybody say that.
That's probably true too. But anyway, what do I know now that I didn't? There's a lot of things I know now. Wisdom comes with age, and every time I see a Facebook status update pop up from 10 or 15 years ago, I want to go back and punch little Corey in the face, you know, because I just didn't know. You know, I thought I was being cool or hip or whatever, and it's hard to have that self-awareness. I think what you really have to come down to is define what a farmer or what being a farmer, what being in agriculture is. I think we all grew up with this kind of picturesque, how it was going to be, how grandpa did it, how dad did it. And at the end of the day, it's not that. It's all, agriculture is always changing. It's always getting better. And to have that mentality that I have to do it that way, it's wrong. You might end up doing it completely different, but you're still a farmer.
You just said that it's always getting better. There's people that quibble with that, and then you almost might say that the older one gets, and you know, we're saying this is advice maybe to someone that's younger than us. They might quibble with the idea that it's always getting better because that's the rose-colored lenses thing, right? That's the old thing. Right. Well, you know what? It ain't like it was in the old days. I hate that talk. I've never enjoyed that, and even though I'm getting older myself, I don't find that thing of that somehow the old days were better. I don't believe that. I put that in one of my books. You know, my old man only had one arm from the time he was 8 years old, and I can tell you that growing up very poorly as a tenant farmer and before penicillin and having lost his arm to gangrene and amputation, he never pulled that bullshit of somehow the old days were grand and today is not, because you know little boys don't break an arm and have to have it cut off now. So I've always kind of thought that. That I agree with you, that things are getting better. Yeah. Are there challenges? Yes. But generally, there's always opportunity. There's new things that are probably improvements.
Yeah, and social media has just amplified this argument. About half a month, 2 to 3 weeks ago on TikTok, actually, there was a big old debate going on between we need to have regulation against who can own farmland and how big farms can get and all this stuff. And people were up in arms. And history and the way things used to be done is important. I think to respect that, and if you want to go restore tractors and go to plow days and do that kind of stuff, I completely respect that. But to completely have blinders on and not think that it's going to improve, it'd be dumb. And if you want to make your bed in that lane, then we shouldn't have tractors. We should be farming with horses and plows still.
Right. Tanner, by the way, hop in on this, but I do want to stick on that topic because that's one that I do want everybody, regardless of their generation or their age, to think about this very thing, that topic that Corey just brought up. So go ahead and take a spin off that.
Yeah, it is. It's just interesting to see that everybody's got a perspective. I mean, that's one thing that I've picked up on over the years is I can learn something from anybody, and I don't have to agree with it, but I can still learn about where it's coming from. But there are a lot of folks that you network with, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what sales position or service position or farm you're in, that you're not going to agree with. Maybe it's your dad.
Right.
Maybe it's your boss. Hopefully it's neither one of those because you probably have to work with both those people every single day. But if you can take a grain out of somebody else's knapsack and allow yourself to build your knowledge base, your experience, your perspective on whatever you're going to be doing in life, I think that goes a long ways. But the anytime, in my opinion, you bring regulation into anything, it's a very slippery slope.
It's a very slippery slope. So since we are gearing this to, say, the younger person, because I was asked this question, actually it was in May, we're recording this in May, and they said, graduation time, what's your advice for the young aspiring farmer? I said, well, maybe not just farmer, it's anybody that wants to enter or is entering the industry of agriculture. So let's go with that one. Where you're really heading there, Corey, and I didn't get in on the TikTok debate, but I've had the same thing also. On my feeds and my commentary and whatnot. Well, you know what? It's hard for a young person to get into agriculture. There ought to be this law. And I'm like, well, what should the law be? Should the law be that someone is forced to sell you agricultural real estate for 1/3 of its value just because you're 23 and you want to get into this game? Okay, who enforces that? Some of the people in ag frighten me. And I guess this would be one of my pieces of advice for the young person in this industry. Be damn careful about some of the voices that you're hearing out here because they verge on worse than socialism. I kind of told this one person, I said, well, maybe collective agriculture is just the answer. It worked really well in Russia. Are we supposed to... This thing of it's hard for a young person to be in this business because of the money, because of the returns. Like, well, it's hard for a young person to get in the asphalt shingle manufacturing business also. Should we create laws for that? And so I quibble a little bit with this whole thing of who should be allowed to farm size caps and price ceilings on everything from machinery to ag inputs to agricultural real estate. I really bristle at that, and I would encourage anybody that's young getting in this game, be very careful about what you wish for, or more importantly, what you vote for and ask for, because the slippery slope that Tanner spoke of looks a hell of a lot like the collective agricultural model that has been tried in multiple societies and has always been an abject failure.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a generational difference because, a lot of the folks that we're gearing this conversation towards have been blessed with the internet at their fingertips, with things at the reach of an app on their phone, whether it's DoorDash or Amazon Prime or something that they can get an instant answer to where maybe we don't get as much exposure to the I worked a long time for this, earned it, and got to see the rewards over 10, 20 years that sometimes it took, that we want instant gratification. I mean, I love mowing the yard. Corey's going to have a different opinion than I on this. I love mowing the yard because I have instant gratification. Yep. Beautiful lines, my stripes. I can see this is a good job done. It only took me a half hour, thank God. But to others, right, maybe the instant gratification is that desire, and that's where a short-sighted opinion on we should put caps on things and make it more affordable so I can get it right now isn't the same as working for it or building up into it. I mean, there are very few people that become lawyers overnight. Yep. Never happens there either.
Right.
Yeah,
Mrs. Mason told me once, and when she worked in corporate, which she hasn't now for about a decade, but she said, I don't see anything come to fruition. I work in this corporate, machine, and I don't see anything come. She says, you don't know how lucky you are. Back then, I was much more of a stage act as opposed to doing the podcasts and books and all this kind of thing. And she said, you walk on stage, and 45 minutes later, you walk off, and you know exactly how it went, and you've got the instant result right there. And she says, most people never have that, not to mention 100 times a year. Yeah.
Yep. And the problem is the barrier to entry on getting into agriculture or farming, specifically farming, right? And that's why a lot of people will say it's hard to get in because my dad and my granddad didn't farm. We don't have no land. Well, there's a lot of farmers that don't own very much land. Maybe they had some tractors or whatever, but you don't have to farm 3,000, 5,000, 1,000. You don't have to farm 500 acres. You can rent some ground. You can rent the patches that no one else wants, and you don't have to farm with a $500,000 tractor and a $700,000 combine and all that. There's ways around it, but that barrier to entry is probably the biggest argument that most people have.
I've heard it again and again and again, and I say, well, you know what? Actually, there's a thing. I can go to the USDA and get a beginning farmer loan for a subsidized interest rate. Tell me how I can do that if I want to start a drywall contractor business. Can't happen. So the point is, we actually make it easier. People in ag bristle at this because they've only ever worked in ag. And I say, well, go start another small business and tell me about all the federal agencies that are lined up to give you 2% notes with zero collateral, only in ag.
And I can actually speak direct to that. I used that beginning farmer loan to buy my first piece of property, and I am not in that program anymore. I got out of it as fast as I possibly could because they incentivize you to pay down on cheaper debt before the more expensive side. It's called there's several ways they do it, but mine was a 5-45-50 loan where 5% down. Is it, Tanner, 45% to the
standard financial
to a standard financial bank from your area, that whoever you want to work with, and then 50% to the USDA or FSA, whoever's funding that. Nice, because 5% down, not much collateral. They'll term it out for 40 years. The bank loves it because they get first position on the note.
Right.
Yep.
My biggest problem with it, and it's a blended rate, right? You'll go get, say it's at 6.5-7% with Joe Blow Bank down the road, and then the government is at 2%, and you blend it. So you get a decent rate. My biggest problem is I was signing the documents, and on the second or third to last page, they never even told me, said I cannot leverage any of my equity in that farm until FSA is completely satisfied. So I could be 75% paid down on that note.
Uh-huh.
25% to FSA, 25%.
You can't, though, go and borrow money against the 75% of the equity you've already accumulated.
So it's immediately deterring you from growing, or whatever. And so I want out of it. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I could not have bought that land if I did not have that. So
I want to get into, we haven't heard enough from Tanner. I want to get into the actual advice for the young person, whether it's farming or getting into any field, any.
The actual advice. You hear that? The actual.
Well, I'm just complaining now.
No, you're not complaining. It's good.
I am.
By the way, imagine that, a farmer bitching about stuff. Never heard of such a thing, ever. All right. Speaking of funding, I want to talk to you about funding your farm, your ranch, or your agribusiness. Maybe if you listen to this, you are an aspiring entrepreneur and you want to have your own agricultural entity, whatever it is. Sometimes you are not going to fit the template that a normal bank has. You need money. Your operation is unique, so why should you try to fit a square peg into a round hole with one-size-fits-all ag credit? I love ag bankers. I work with a community bank. I've done presentations for the farm credit people. Love those people. But you know what? Sometimes what you are doing in agriculture does not fit what their template is. You need money to grow. Harvest Returns can help. They understand that every agribusiness is different. With a pool of over 18,000 investors, what Harvest Returns does, they take investors and then pair them up with investments in agriculture. You could be that investment. They have 18,000 investors. They create financing options that are creative, that are different than normal. Harvest Returns can bring the capital you need to reach your goals. To learn more, go to harvestreturns.com. You can go to harvestreturns.com and now start growing your operation today. Tanner, advice to the person that's young coming into agriculture in any capacity.
Yeah, find somebody that you want to be. Find somebody that you identify, whether you are going into insurance, whether you're going into financial institution like you just described. You've got a farmer in your area that you identify with as something that is a goal of yours to be a target, and try to become a student of them or a friend of theirs. Offer to buy them lunch. More than likely, by the time you get to a second meeting, they're going to keep buying you lunches because they love seeing someone that's interested in what they're doing. We've learned on this podcast through all of our interviews, if you can get somebody to talk about themselves, they'll do it forever. If you can get them to talk about something that they're passionate about, they'll do it for even longer than ever. So if you've got an insurance agent in the area and that's what you really want to strive to do and be, then find them. See if they'll go to lunch with you, have a conversation, create kind of an informal or possibly even formal mentorship, and just kind of find out what they did when they were your age. I mean, I can't give insight into every single industry, but I know you can do that. Whether you want to be an attorney, you want to be a seed salesman, you want to go into agri-financial industry, you can still find somebody that you think is doing really well and go pick their brain.
Yeah, I don't like the pick your brain thing. I did a video about that a long time ago. I said, that's what vultures do to roadkill. They pick their brain. But the thing that I get those solicitations sometimes. I'd like to pick your brain over a cup of coffee. I'm like, well, I don't want my brain picked. And more importantly, I've drank half of an ounce of coffee in my whole entire life. If you paid attention to anything, if you actually did your research, you'd know I only drink chocolate milk, Coca-Cola, and Coors Banquet, actually, and other kinds of beer. But I guess the point I'd make here is, the other one, what if you offer to work for them? That's the other one. Like, I want to learn this. I could come and can I work for you to learn? Because I think that really aspiring people understand, you want to make money for your work, but also everything you do now is job training for the next one. So I think I would spin off of that, Tanner, and even say, what if it's a position where you could learn through work? And that's something advice that I would definitely give, which brings me to my next one. Because I wrote down 8 things in particular that I would tell if I'm giving the commencement speech. It's going to be boring as hell because it's just line item event here of advice. Since we're talking about farming, we'll go with that one. My piece of advice, you're young, get off the farm. Leave. Go somewhere. Minimum of 2 years, 5 is better. Go away. Go away. Go get away. Your mommy's not doing your laundry anymore. You know how many people in the farming game, like their mom still does her laundry when they're 30 years old? I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? This is not a picture of a grown-up. Get away. Go learn. Go work elsewhere. Go where your parents are not. That's my first piece of advice.
Corey's mom still does his laundry.
This is, I think, one of the biggest ones. I think you nailed it on the head here, Damian. My parents did not want me to come back to the farm. Times were not great. There wasn't a spot for me, if you will. My dad took over the farm later in a later career, in his 50s, took over the farm. I feel like a lot of that is pushback of a lot of farmers farm till they're dead. Mm-hmm. And they pushed me off the farm, said, go to college. We want you to go work for someone else. And then if you want to come back and farm, great. If it fails, at least you have a college degree. You got other experiences. And I think that is where a lot of ideas that I have got, relationships that I've built has come along the way. And I definitely would suggest doing that.
Tanner, am I on to something there when I say leave, go away, grow?
Yeah, it's interesting to see when and where this has worked. I spent a long time working with clients that were farmers, and you'd see some of the kids that would immediately go from high school and right back onto the farm, and there's no difference, right? The way the farm is managed, the way that decisions are made, the way that they interact with people professionally in their lives, there is no change. So I've seen firsthand where that value is. I'm even looking at my family, my in-laws, and I've got a nephew that's getting ready to graduate, and I want him to go somewhere else. And he so badly just wants to be there all the time. I love that passion. I love to see that, but ultimately I wholeheartedly agree. If you can go off and view this as a time, when we look back on this, we got to do some interviews down at the Custom Harvesters event. And I would have loved to have gone and combined wheat on a wheat harvest, a wheat run, and just been off with the guys and gals and the crew and done that. And I didn't go. This is your time to go do things like that when you get older and have kids or a job, a real job, you don't get to come back and do.
Tanner and I have this in common. When I was 16, I read, of all things, I knew about it from farm publications. I believe it was a big story in National Geographic about following the wheat harvest. And I said, after I graduated from high school, I'm going to do that. Well, I didn't. I went and worked in a ceiling tile factory for 3 summers to pay my way through school, which also was very educational. When you're working the overnight shift with ex-convicts that have an 8th grade education, it's very educational. But no, I didn't get to drive a combine from Texas up to Manitoba like I always thought I would. Which goes to the experience thing. So get away. And I don't mean whether you're going to farm or not farm. You're going to go and work for a corporation? Still, get away. Go get away. You will only learn when you at some point, you got to jump off the diving board, right? And I think that's the other one. And that goes to the other one about experience. I think on my LinkedIn profile, I talk about this. I worked as a bartender at college. I learned a lot about humans by being a bartender for 7 months of my life. I wouldn't know a lot of things and understand things were it not for that experience. To Tanner's point about doing these things when you're young, yeah, you still should do experiences when you're old, but your learning curve is like straight up when you're young because it's all new. If I went and was a bartender now, it wouldn't be the same experience, right?
Right. Fair. Well, and especially if you're not going to go be your own boss on the farm. I think that is so crucial to have that on your resume, because you're not going to only know what you like, you're going to know what you don't like, who you work with well, all that kind of stuff. It's all about networking and relationships.
Give me a piece of advice, Tanner. Okay, that nephew right now, you're talking to him. Your first advice was get away. What's your next piece of advice?
It's a great question. That was the first one that really came to my mind. The second one is, he's trying to be the baby boss right now. That's the joke. Everybody on the farm calls him the baby boss because he already thinks he knows what we should be doing instead of what his dad and his grandpa have, for things that are in place, let alone employees that have been around longer than I've been married into the family. So it's just quite interesting that, as Corey mentioned early on in this episode, that, when he looks back at old status updates and old things that he had posted on social media, that wisdom truly does come with age. So my second piece of advice would be, you got to shut up. Just listen. I mean, honestly, the best podcast that we've ever done is when we ask like 6 questions in an hour-long interview and the guest carries the conversation, shares their expertise, shares what they're most passionate about, because we're able to listen. And it's dumb. It's a cliche, but there's a reason people have said, if you can listen more than you speak, you'll be better off.
That thing that you're talking about, baby boss, that's the one when we say, Corey, Tanner, and Damian are giving some advice to a younger person in ag. And it doesn't matter, farming, running a business, whatever it is. You like the moxie of a young person. You like the confidence. But the thing is, there's somebody that's our age that's getting baby bossed that says, kid, I've fallen and skinned my knees more fucking times than you in 1 week than you have in your life. And if you can have that clairvoyance as a young person, which of course you don't because you're still young and you don't know these things, you haven't skinned your knees enough to have the confidence that you have. And I as much as you want these young people to have confidence, sometimes you're like, yeah, I tell you what, man, you need to fall down a couple more times to have this level of confidence. And because what hell of it is, and probably you're there now, I can tell you, my confidence got eroded through enough falling downs and enough failures. And then it was the coming back. And that's when I think I got strong, late 30s, like where you guys are. Like, I got washed. I got washed for about 4 years. And then it erodes your confidence. And then when you build back, then it's like, oh my God, like Corey's point, I am almost embarrassed at how arrogantly confident I was so many years ago.
Well, Farm for Profit grew when we stopped making it about me. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I started Farm for Profit as a way to connect myself with experts. The advice that I want to give to young kids is, and those in any industry, is go connect with people in your field that you consider to be experts. And that was the sole motivation of starting Farm for Profit, is I wanted to be the guy that knew everybody. And as soon as it flipped from me getting to know everybody, that it was the opportunity to get to learn everybody else's story, that we saw so much more success. I mean, usually I give Corey credit for that, but on this podcast, I'm going to say it's when we switched our mindset of, it's not all about you. And if you're going to go into a sales or a service role, the more you can make it about the customer that you're serving, the people that you're working with, or the boss that you have, the more successful you're going to be early on.
So far, you've told me, shut up. Here's your advice, and then make it about the customer. I'll go right along with that. I've pointed out that you guys know my story because I was on your show 31 years ago. I quit corporate to be in comedy, and for the first year or so, I thought I was selling jokes, and when I got better, and then ultimately good, was when I realized I was selling an experience, and it had everything to do with that audience. It didn't mean anything about me. It was, and then the realization that we always work for other people's money. And if you understand that, it's about earning and it's about creating something of value for them. And that's kind of exactly what you're talking about, Tanner.
Are you scratching over here on the paper?
Yeah,
Your hand's going to fall off.
Getting some ideas.
All right, give me your ideas. What are you scratching down?
I was just trying to think of the next.
Some of us did this before the interview. Some of us actually went through the process of preparing.
Yeah, but that's how I learn. I learn on the go, and I'm in the moment. My next piece of advice, this particularly would be if you're from a farm family, so maybe a little bit easier than a first generation. Probably one of the biggest DMs or emails that we get from our listeners is family troubles.
Yeah.
Trying to come back to the farm, have that tough conversation, bring in a third party if you need to, that has no skin in the game, and help mediate that situation, because you guys need to have a plan. Whether you like it or not, I know farming is a lifestyle, and that's why you don't just be a farmer all your life and go be a lawyer. Lawyers and doctors be a lawyer and doctor all their life, then they want to go be a farmer, right? It's a lifestyle. They love it, but it's a business, and you need to have those tough conversations. You need to have a plan going in, and you need to execute that. And that's tough to have, but that would be my next.
I love it because one of my my notes on advice to a young person entering agriculture is no money and no business. I made this point along many times over my career. It was said to me once, there's 4 letters in the word show and there's 8 letters in the word business. Someone told me that, and I said, okay, and I understood it, and a lot of people don't get it. Put twice as much effort into the business as the show to be successful, and I think that you could say anything about farm business. Oh, yeah, man, I love tractors, and I love working in the shop. I'm like, that's fantastic. What do your numbers look like? I just really like driving. Like, that's fantastic. What's your balance sheet? What's your P&L statement look like? What's the cost of production? If you don't know this, you're destined to be, I think, driving a tractor for somebody else. Or, I mean, if you've got, and if you are an employee, understand money and business. Tanner?
You're going to get a lot of respect, especially if you're in any type of a sales role, if you understand your product better than they expected you to, which means you probably have to understand it better than any of your competition. And if you can understand your competition's product as good of or better than they do, you're going to gain a lot of respect from those customers that you have. Whether you're selling chemicals, seed, fertilizer, money, or any other thing that comes along with being in this realm of business, you're going to have so much more success if, just like you said, you invest time and knowledge into the business side, then go make a flashy presentation.
Yeah.
Show up and blow me away.
In the same breath, I'm going to say, if you do like driving tractors and not, knowing your numbers and all that, and you're not willing to hire someone to help you with that, if you know you're short in that, it's not a problem to go drive tractors for someone else if they pay you a good wage and that considers you farming and you go home at night and you love your life. That's fine.
Well, that's the thing. Like we're using production agriculture core as an example. If you don't want to run it as a business, go do production agriculture for someone else. And I'm not being mean in any way. I mean, you got to know your strengths because at this point, there's plenty of entrepreneurial opportunities, more than it's ever been. The internet, all these things we're talking about, that phone that you've got in your hand that's smarter than the Apollo space program, for God's sakes. But if you have no interest in being on the business side, to Tanner's point, when you show up to do business, be a service person, whatever that is, be in the food process, whatever it is, you better be very product oriented, but also business knowledgeable. And that's it, because it's cute to talk about how we love this industry and our passion for it, but at the end of the day, it's got to make money.
Yeah, and that takes all kinds of people to do all kinds of jobs.
Well, and what causes stress is doing things you don't enjoy or you're not good at. And boy, if you only like driving tractors, I hate to tell you, driving tractors is a very small percentage of the job, and you're going to get hit with tariffs affecting markets. You're going to get hit with weather and things that are out of your control, and it's going to catch you. And maybe that's why we have so much mental health problems in ag compared to the rest of the world, that it's, go do something that brings you joy. You don't have to be a farmer. We're not that special. Not that special at all.
What about, Tanner, on the corporate side? Again, we talked about experience. You said shut up, learn, lots of experience. The thing about, I wrote down one of my things was, if I was going to advise anybody, is that ag struggles more than most businesses to comprehend our own customers. And that could be within ag or the bigger picture. Ultimately, we all work for the consumers that are in the suburbs of Des Moines or Chicago or whatever. And I'd say that that's something that about getting away and all the other experiences. Most ag people don't read. They read what is on ag Twitter. I think the more you could grasp that we're this little microcosm, we're such a small percentage of the population. You better get out there and, and be around the non-ag majority, and it'll do you some good.
Well, that's why our media company exists, just for the fact that even those that are retailers to farmers in agriculture didn't fully understand what the farmer needed to know, wanted to see. And that's a perspective we provided. But even beyond that, like you said, just getting to understand the whole circle of whatever company, whatever business you're in. Because it takes everybody to do every kind of job. I've got family that own businesses and the stress got too much on them. And now they love working for somebody else, love doing that job. So I looked up the stats here. When you went into the working field, the average number of jobs that your generation would have in a lifetime was 7. Job changes happened every 7 to 8, 7 to 9 years. Now, folks our age, Corey's age, my age, will have more than 12 jobs in a lifetime.
And the person we're gearing this to that's 23 years old right now, let me just take a guess here, 18?
Yeah, so there's no penalty anymore for switching jobs. I mean, it used to be when we built our resumes that you wanted to have 4 or 5 years in a spot, otherwise you felt like you were a job hopper.
Not only is it not a penalty, it's reward, because usually when you're hopping, it's not just because you like that job better, it's for a better pay increase.
So where I was going with this is do the job. Go into it knowing that you're not married to that job. And guess what? If you end up loving it, stay.
Right.
If you don't, find another one that might be interesting to you, because a lot of people can ride something out for 8 to 18 months and find out, you know what, that was a good experience. I learned from that. I don't want to do it anymore. I want to go this direction. Or I sure like the company. I just need to be in a different department. Or gosh, it really is only tractor driving for 3 months out of the year. This sucks. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do this anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about the entrepreneurialism aspect of agriculture, because I think that door is more wide open than it has been, and because of the tools, et cetera, and because of the acceptability, just like Tanner's point that job hopping was a sin and looked down upon. Now it's not. Same thing with running your own racket, which is, the gig economy. And I still see opportunities there. All right, before I do that, I want to talk about my friends at Redox. Redox reminds you that with a new growing season underway, the superior nutrition from Redox Bionutrients can make a major difference come harvest time. Redox provides carefully sourced nutrients that are combined with biostimulants that have been proven winners since Darren Moon began this company 31 years ago. Started in specialty crop, so that got a better way. We're not going to use so many synthetics. We're not going to use so much. Maybe there's a biostimulant that can achieve some of these goals. One of those examples is a product called DiCap, which provides unequaled stress defense. It's a stress mitigant product. It also can increase your plant's respiration and antioxidant production. And bonus, it's just a fantastic source of potassium and phosphorus. If you want to learn more about the product line, including DiCap, go to redoxgrows.com. That's Redox, REDOX, grows.com. Check it out. If you're a young person listening to this, if you're a middle-aged person listening to this, entrepreneurialism is not for everybody, right? But now more than ever, there are entrepreneurial opportunities out here. The internet has made this happen. The acceptability of it. I think that it's a great time. And unfortunately, we crank out all kinds of ag people that know how to take soil samples, and they think it's all about farm machinery and all that. Good. Now let's talk to me about running your own business. And I think that we suck at instilling that in most of our people.
I think the thing that confirms this is look at most successful farms. Did they get there to where they're at? Think of the people that own the largest amount of acres in your area or have the nicest place. Do they just farm? Is that the only thing that they do? Hardly ever is that true. A lot of them have a trucking company, a seed sales, even outside of agriculture. They own apartments in town, diversify, and that entrepreneur spirit, it goes hand in hand with farming, right? Like just farming in general is kind of entrepreneurial, but if you can expand outside of ag or outside of that farming business, hands down, it's what's going to get you to that next level.
I'm so glad I had the word diversification written down as one of my advisory things, and it goes right along with entrepreneurialism. What you're talking about, what's the thing they taught us? All your eggs in one basket, and diversification of revenue. No matter what aspect of ag you're in, and Tanner, I want you to hop in on this. I don't know how many revenue sources you have. I know that I've got 5, and it took me a while to get here. I sleep better now, and I'm less stressed now. 31 years of running my own enterprise to have diversified revenue. That's where entrepreneurialism is less stressful, and it's because of that.
Yeah, it is interesting because diversification comes in so many different forms and fashions. I remember when I first filled out a resume that you put on what skill you knew. If you were proficient in Word or proficient in Excel, or you had those types of diversified skills. Now I think it just goes so much further beyond that. It's one of the things we preach on Farm for Profit. We've interviewed folks, like Corey said, you can identify very clearly who the most successful people are. And if they're running a business, and then they pipe up and they say, oh yeah, and then I've got this that I do on the side, or I've got this that I've invested time in. I mean, every time you mention your books, I'm just blown away, because I've said for years we should write a book. And if you don't know how to do it, you got to figure out how to do it. Either partner up with somebody that does know, or start doing your research on your own, or guess what? You can go about it your own way. You can blaze a trail. It doesn't have to be done the same way that everybody else does. But it is quite a deal when you think about the way our podcast tries to help farmers achieve higher level of profitability can transfer into anybody that's running any type of business, and diversification is one of those keys.
And I think it also snowballs. It goes back to leave the farm, go get other experiences. Well, you're forcing yourself to be in other areas of ag or even outside of ag. So every time you're out, you're going to learn something, and you can actually take that back to your farm business or wherever you're at in agriculture. So it only gets better.
What you just referenced really is, we talk about diversification of revenue, diversification of knowledge base. And like I said, I think in this industry, and granted it's the one that we work in, what's the term? We get more siloed. You'll talk to somebody that knows everything about this little thing, and then you mention something that, honest to goodness, is just a foot away from that. Clueless. And I think that's really a shortcoming. I think diversification of knowledge and having more breadth would be a big advice I would give a young person. Yeah, go ahead and be an expert, but for God's sakes, pay attention to what else is going on.
Right. We learn a lot from our co-host, our third co-host, Dave, who you've never met and you think is imaginary.
He doesn't show up. He doesn't show up. Obviously, he wasn't in Kansas City. He's not on this episode right here. I don't know why you keep him around. You know what I think we should consider doing? Fire his ass and bring me in as the number 3 guy, and all of a sudden, then we get to hang out more.
I have a feeling if we brought you in as the number 3 guy, you'd move to the number 1 spot, and then I wouldn't have a role. But it's great because he does come across some things to where you find out as an entrepreneur, because he runs a real estate auction business, as a marketing company, that you're there to solve problems. And sometimes you get so focused on solving that problem that you don't take in what's around you, just like you said. And sometimes if you can look at the perspective or the viewpoints or the information that's outside of the problem you're trying to solve, all of a sudden the solution just kind of pops up, and it's like, duh, here's how we do this.
Corey, give me another piece of advice. It's the 18 to 22-year-old that says, "Hey, you've been out here for a while. What do I need to know?"
So it's kind of going to be on the lines of diversification, which we've already talked about, but time is our most valuable asset. And a lot of the coolest things in ag is leverage of our time. We plant a seed, and for the most part, besides some management in the office, maybe some side dressing, some spraying here and there, we're not out in the field every day. Same thing with livestock. You maybe go do chores a couple times a day, but that steer, that pig, that chicken, whatever, it's growing, it's doing all the work, right? It's becoming that steak. Find things that free up your time that you can go do other items. Like that, this podcast, I would not be able to do this if I was a full-time anything else. Mm-hmm. But because I'm in ag, I'm in farming, I'm my own boss, I know that I can work last weekend and come in 2 days this week, or whatever, vice versa. But just find things that you can leverage your time, diversification, make money while you sleep.
Andrew, do you want to just tell your partner there that he just kind of created this sin that you're never supposed to do if you work in this industry? You're supposed to tell farmers that they work 600 hours a week, that nobody works harder than them, and they that stupid thing on social media. They asked 100 farmers, "What do you do in your spare time?" And 4 of them said, "What day is it?" I get so tired of this thing. You are right. You have flexibility, which means you have time, which is our most valuable asset that could be deployed productively. And by the way, we all do. Whether you work, you don't have to be a farmer. We all, if you're if you're an entrepreneur, if you work for another company, you probably have deployable time.
There are certain times of the year where I don't know what day it is. Sure. But those are few and far in between.
Right.
I would say too, along the same lines of what he's doing, you, even as a young professional, can still be a boss. There are certain tasks that you can identify that it is better to have paid done or somebody else assigned to that role, delegated to, that frees up your ability to do something of higher value, whether that's continuing to grow in your knowledge base, continuing to knock out high dollar tasks. I mean, I used to edit every show that Farm for Profit did. And as soon as I gave that up, it was like I had 2 more days in the week. That's an exaggeration upon time, but they freed up mental space, it freed up physical time, and all of a sudden the productivity just increased. And that was only one thing. So we started trying to give up as many things as possible to where you can spend more time using your mind, learning new things, connecting with more people. And even as a young professional, you can still afford, if done correctly, to have some of your tasks done by somebody else.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not leveraging your time to go do something else. Sometimes it's just leveraging your time to go be a better husband or father or something like that, so you don't get a divorce. And
that's a piece of advice you should be giving a young person is
right.
Investment of your time also is for those that you love and your family, and that's very valuable.
I feel bad for your editor if this sound of the rain is coming through. We're getting hit by a pretty good storm right now.
all the business success in the world will make up for an unhappy home life. I think that's one of the old statements.
That's
right?
True.
So, by the way, if you're watching this video, you'll see that Corey is hitting the booze right now. He claims it's like lemonade or something, but it's a rocks glass from mint julep that came from the Kentucky Derby 2 years ago.
I wish it was a mint julep. That sounds good.
It really does.
One thing you just talked about that I would encourage young people to do is understand the value of time. And it's not just ag people, it's everybody that struggles with this, that if you said, okay, you just piddled around on this thing for 3 hours today. No, I didn't. Like, really? Well, I mean, you can do a screen time report on your phone. What were you doing? Were you actually reaching out to customers, or were you just piddling around? And there's a lot of those things that social media is addictive. And I swear to you, I think that honestly, giving kids these smartphones when they're 10, it might be worse. We should be giving them a pack of Marlboros instead. I think that it's more. I think it's maybe worse for them.
Very easily could be.
It's a struggle in my household right now. I've got a daughter that just turned 11, and she's been asking for years. She wants one, and we've got a plan. My wife and I do. We see the same thing that you do. Her friends that already have them, the parents have lost those kids.
Yep.
You don't get the communication in the car ride. You don't get the after school follow up. I'm not even around some of the times, and it would be handy for her to have a phone to FaceTime me or have a conversation, but I could still have those. But no, it is interesting because our role, the role that Corey and I and Dave and our whole Farm for Profit team continue to be in is we're forced to be on them. But ironically, when we spend more time making the content, we find ourselves consuming less and less.
Okay.
And when we consume, it's like homework.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Doing the research. By the way, you've mentioned this guy multiple times now. Dave is dead. Okay, there is no Dave. There's just you two, and there's going to be a collaboration with Damian Mason. I want to do another one, advice to young people in ag, but I want to hear from you. You got anything else? All right, I'm going to throw it at you because we're talking about social media, and you and I keep up because it's part of what we do. This is for anybody in ag, not just young people. Consumers actually don't care about your story. I know you've been told at every Farm Bureau meeting you've gone to for the last 20 years, you got to tell your story, you got to tell your story. Guess what? They don't give a shit. You know what? They care about themselves, just like you do. Do you care about the consumer story? Do you care about the woman with her 3 children that has a home in Clive, Iowa, and her job? Do you care about that? No. Well, guess what? She doesn't care about yours either. Please stop. People care about themselves. Sorry. You want to talk about time? Stop wasting time telling your story. Nobody cares. You guys agree?
I think on the whole, but it's hard to throw a whole blanket over it. There is a segment of granola crunchy people that do get that feel good of going to the farmer's market and talking to whoever brought that produce. There is a small segment, but as a whole, the person shopping at your local Walmart, grocery store, or whatever, probably not. Probably don't care.
And I'm going to take the route of, I don't know if they care so much about your personal story, whether you had heartache or bankruptcy or whatever it is. I do think they care about the product story. And I look at that too.
And traceability, that's the push for traceability, Tanner, I think is where you're going with that.
Yeah, and even when we look at some of the clients that advertise on our podcast and use our media company to promote them, we still say we want to tell your story, but it's more in the method you're delivering your messaging, rather than it is saying, I was a farm kid from Northwest Iowa and I got to have this exposure. No, we want to know how you discovered that this widget was the strongest and the best and crafted into that position, and why that's going to, like you said, bring value to the end user on that side of it. So it matters to an extent. I just don't think it's the foo-foo personal stuff.
Yeah. And I think I could piggyback on top of this. This is kind of similar. I hate the entitlement in agriculture. I hate that we think, we grew up on a farm. I should be able to farm it. No. When you were born, it was not given to you. You just don't get entitled to that. It's just it looks bad. I do not like that. And we're not special. No one needs to thank a farmer. There's nothing different from us than a trucker to a welder to the guy that's selling the insurance or whatever. Everyone's got a role to play.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. You've probably heard me say it because I've done it, and I probably offend some in our industry when I do that. But it's the same thing about the thank a farmer and all that stuff. I'm like, well, what about the person that's working 90 hours a week running a restaurant? There's a lot of people that work hard in their business. With that in mind about the advice we give to anybody in this industry, I'd say that that's the one. When you just talked about entitlement, it goes back to that customer thing. We all work for other people's money, and that's where I've heard agricultural people say, our worst enemy is the suburban housewife that's got time on her hands that can go online and bash on what we do in agriculture. I'm like, when you start calling your customer your worst enemy, I get a little concerned about that. Ultimately, we work for their money, right?
Right. Yep.
Tanner?
Well, I got 2 real quick ones, if you don't mind.
I do. I was getting ready to come to you. I'm not going to ask Dave for his advice to anybody. Dave is dead. There is no Dave.
I love this. I can't wait to clip that. But the two kind of go hand in hand. We've failed a lot in the growth process of Farm for Profit. I failed a lot professionally, and that's fine. It's just a matter of where do you mark that line of how long you push the failure thinking that it's still going to right itself. Being able to try and gain some perspective that when something's not working or not going right, to cut bait and switch paths is probably something that is more of a natural talent or an experience gained skill, but ultimately it's going to happen. So don't beat yourself out about it. And along with you're going to fail is if you just truly become a good person. Like you said, we're sometimes painting that consumer as the enemy. If you do right by others, the way that you want to be done right too is going to go an extremely long ways. I listened to a rodeo podcast, a rodeo announcer and a clown that do a show together called Rump Chat, and they were talking to one of the rodeo schools. The guy's been there for years, and they talked about how do you know if someone's going to be successful? And they said, I love when somebody comes in with a humble confidence. They treat everybody there with respect, whether it's the lady that checks them in, the guy that's going to flank their horse, or whatever it ends up being. They're still confident in their ability that they can do the job, but they're not going to jump all over somebody else to take advantage of an opportunity along the way. The folks that come in that are arrogant and treat everybody else like they're beneath them never succeed.
I like it. Confidently humble. I like it. Like, I know I can do this, but I'm also not going to come in here and balls swinging. Corey, what's your advice to anybody in agriculture?
Surround yourself with a good team. I know we've touched on that several different occasions, but I want to look at our friend Kelly Garrett. I mean, everyone thinks Kelly's just this amazing farmer, grows the highest yields in Iowa and all that. And Kelly is an amazing person and a great talent. But if you ever take a visit to his farm, you learn quickly that it's not all Kelly Garrett. He has a great team around him and he started up other businesses, diversification and insurance to fertilizer sales to trucking. And he's definitely a pretty good role model.
As you think about it, it's the ability to Tanner's point to delegate, obviously overseeing it and clearly keeping your mind on the dollars, et cetera. But you can't be everything, and it's generally foolish to do so. The delegation part of it, the delegation, finding the right person and being able to delegate is a big part of that.
And us as farmers, we are the most guilty at trying to be the electrician, the accountant, the mechanic. I mean, everything at one time. And there's no way that we can be the best at all of those.
No, you're not proficient. And again, it goes back to that thing about what do you value your time at? You've got contract barns. I remember there's duck companies here in Indiana, and my brother and I were approached by the duck people, and they wanted to put up barns, and we said, sure. We got the money, we got land, and we're both business-minded guys. We ran through the numbers, and I said, I don't know if I want to work for $8 an hour. And they said, what? I said, this looks like it's a really an $8 an hour job that's not even guaranteed. And they said, yeah, but you get the barn. I said, well, that's exactly what I want. I want to work for $8 an hour for 15 years to have a dilapidated, depreciated duck barn. that has zero value. That has zero value for anything else. So I think that and I said, I don't know who would do this. Oh, we have no problem getting contracts for barns. I said, again, you really got to think about this in agriculture and any business, looking at the actual return on the time and the investment.
Yeah, know your worth. And it goes back to what I said, leveraging time. A lot of us farmers are guilty at not charging for our time because, well, heck, I got to do it anyway, or, I got nothing else going on. No, your time is valuable. It's very valuable.
When you started into your comment about our good friend Kelly Garrett, I thought you were going to say our good friend Dave because he just told you not to talk about Dave anymore.
No, he's dead. Remember?
There is no Dave, and that's fine. Okay. I want to go this other last route here about, all right, we're sitting there with somebody and they really did ask us for, that's the thing, we're giving advice here on episode 400 to the person in ag, and I hope that they do ask. You talk about failure. There's many of us in ag work in rural areas. And then there just becomes this thing about the gossip and keep an eye on the neighbors. And I just want to say how debilitating and dumbing down that is. I get it. We can't generally, agriculture happens in rural America a lot, but being focused on the neighborhood gossip and the coffee shop chatter and all that stuff is debilitating, and you will never achieve the success that you could if that's what you're focused on, or that you've got to get above and beyond that. Read a book, spend time improving yourself. I can't emphasize enough, because so much of agriculture happens out here in small community. Trust me, I live half the year in Metro Phoenix, where there's 4.5 million people. Nobody cares about what I'm doing out there, and that's great. If I lived in a small town the whole time, I had my business there, my farming operation there, I'd understand it, that you get judged, etc. You've got to bust through it, because you'll never be successful if you're focused, or it's just a dumbing down effect of that microcosm that I think is really debilitating.
Yeah, there's so many things you can do to better yourself, whether it's through perspective, if you're diversifying your skills. I mean, we were just having a conversation today. We wish we knew another language, right? Whether it was Spanish or Portuguese or something that would provide value to us down the road, a life skill that you can do and spend time investing in, rather than the gossip around the community, because it's going to happen. If you're part of the gossip, those same people are going to be gossiping about you when you're not around. So it just is a wheel, like a hamster wheel. You just never get off.
It's always been a problem, from the coffee shops to now social media, and I've dealt with it here locally. I love most of my neighbors, but there's a select few that, when I got on the podcast, and I got the Bush Light Combine in 2020 or 2021, a lot of people looked negatively at that, and it was just one of those things that kind of hurt at first, but then you just got to use it as fuel for the fire, or at least I did, and everything I do now, I want to see my neighbors succeed. I can't farm everything, nor do I want to. Mm-hmm. I want to farm the ones that are the most profitable. I want to run a great business. I want to have the time to diversify into other things that are going to give me other forms of income. That's my personal goal. And I got to have a strong community. I want my neighbors to succeed. It's the rising tide raises all boats argument.
Friend of mine, Brandon Whip, is a sharp dude and a farmer, and he said if more of these people would spend the hours with a business book than they do the plat book, they'd have a hell of a lot more successful businesses. So plat book is an old thing, Tanner. That was what they used in the old days to look at profits.
Nope, got it.
And find wives. Right?
Yes. John at Stapler Farms finds widows.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yep. He reads the obituaries.
All right, Tanner, get me out of here. What's the last thought?
The last thought I have is you've just got to find something that you enjoy doing. It's back to the same perspective of you only get so much time. And I didn't realize that. I had it early on at a career that I thought I loved, enjoyed doing it, whatever it was, but I have so much more fun being a part of Farm for Profit Media and both of our family farms that I do now, to where I probably work more hours, but I have so much more fun doing it. I have the flexibility to do it when I want to, with the family members that I want to be a part of. And if you can find something like that, I understand if you're young, you might have to take the job that's available, or you might have to take the opportunity that's there, but it doesn't hurt to just keep learning about yourself, and you may have things in your life that change. I never golfed 20 years ago, and I love golfing now. So you can pick up a new skill, a new task, whether it's a hobby or a profession that you didn't even know existed.
I picked up golf 5 years ago. I set a goal this year to get less mad and stop breaking things. Because I did that, and I've had 2 holes in one in my first
Oh,
4
wow.
years. So
You're kidding.
yeah,
That's awesome.
That is I don't have any words for you. I've had 0. I take kids did that for me, because I still am a competitive person, but in golf, I was downright mean to myself after a round or a couple of holes. And once I realized that it was a way that I got into my own headspace, I was able to spend time with adults. I was able to network and build to where now it's just much more enjoyable for me. I still get frustrated, hit a bad shot, but it's not nearly the way I used to.
That's where I need to golf. Corey, do you golf? Maybe we could do this thing. We could start golfing.
So I'm a social golfer. I used to actually, when I was in middle school, I was actually pretty good for that age, but I got way too competitive. I was a very, very competitive person, and I had to quit. And it kind of screwed my baseball swing up. So I chose baseball. Didn't really pick it back up until after college, but now I'm there for the social aspect, having a few drinks, and I don't get mad. And
I'm going to golf with you guys in Iowa, or if you guys make it to the Hoosier State here. Iowa people, let's face it, you don't really want to come to Indiana because it's a lesser I state. So I get that. But maybe if you ever do it.
It's better than Illinois.
We got to drive through the lesser I state.
Yeah.
Well, that's the tough part. If we could just fuse Indiana and Iowa and just somehow get rid of Illinois. The other part of what you said, though, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, and maybe Corey can spin off it. You said about if you enjoy what you do. There's that BS statement about if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. That is not true. I enjoy running my own business, but to pretend that it's not work is complete, utter nonsense. It's work. Doing what we do is work. Running through an airport, getting on a stage, getting creative, recording these things, there's still work. But yeah, it's not digging ditches. It's not, it's work, but it's enjoyable work. And to your point also about that thing, you love seeing your yard get done. Something comes to fruition. That's the thing when you can actually go to bed knowing I created something. That's what I've enjoyed about but it is still work.
Yeah. See, I hate mowing. I bought a robot mower, so free up my time.
Corey, my wife, I've mowed the yard once in 5 years around this farm, and it's because Mrs. Mason was gone, and she got home and she said, the yard looks terrible. And then I said, it's fine. It's mowed. She says, yeah, it's mowed. She says, you mow like a farmer. I said, what the hell does that mean? She says, you look at it as just getting the field done and moving on to the next thing.
You're the BTO mower.
You're the BTO mower. He'd be mowing it twice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Their names are Tanner Winterhof and Corey Hillebo, and they do keep up with me on social media. Apparently, at one point, I had Corey balked. I don't know. He probably sassed me because you can notice he's a little bit of a smarty pants. Anyway, if you want to find out more of their stuff, they have a very successful program, a show called Farm for Profit and a media company. Where do they go, Tanner?
Yep, Farm, the number 4 profit. Type that into Google. You'll find YouTube or any other platform that you want to consume on. Spotify's been hot for us lately. It's a lot of fun. And if you stick to those message boards, you'll probably learn, too, that we'll have a Patreon account coming out with some exclusive stuff that maybe isn't sponsor-friendly.
Yeah, that got us banned on TikTok.
So we're going to make sure our audience gets all the good stuff in one spot.
Got it. So it's Tanner, it's Corey. And by the way, if you like this kind of programming, also check out our show, The Granary. It's shot here at my on-farm tavern, converted old granary with my friends from XtremeAg, including Kelly Garrett that Corey just spoke about. You can find that either at the XtremeAg YouTube channel. Go on YouTube when you're subscribing to my channel. Also check out those guys. And then also go to XtremeAg.farm. It's all right there on YouTube. It's also at the XtremeAg.farm website. I really appreciate you being here. Remember my sponsors, Newfields Ag, got their hat right here behind me. Redox, go to redoxgrows.com. Harvest Returns. Go check that out. Goodness sakes. Imagine that. Harvest Profits was my sponsor back when I first started the show. Harvest Returns. Go to harvestreturns.com. Till next time, thank you guys for being here, Corey and Tanner. I'm Damian Mason, and this is episode 400 of the Business of Agriculture.
Congrats.
Hey, sincere thanks for joining us here on another episode of the Business of Agriculture. I want to ask you, if you farm, are you looking for more productive efficiencies to grow higher yielding, better performing crops? Well, of course you are. Newfields Ag provides a complete portfolio of biological products focused on you, the farmer. If you want to learn more about the Newfields Ag product lineup, go to newfieldsag.com for information.